And good morning. Good morning, Christian. Guten Tag. Guten Tag, sir. Hello, Mo. Good evening. Yes, we are all over the world. It is kind of wild. We're an international conglomerate, shall we say. Well, my audio is acting up and it is kind of spicy. If I touch the dial and turn it down a tidbit, it just drops like a rock. I don't know what's going on. It's like my third audio interface. I don't know if they just go bad or if I wear them out, but or they don't like me. So I apologize. Let me just try and go down a smidge. Okay, we'll see what happens. Like if I touch the knob, it seems to drop 6 dB. But Maranda Umaga, beautiful day. Oh, Maganda Umaga. Thank you, autocorrect. Maganda Umaga. Buenos dias. Ladies and gentlemen, cheers. Happy Friday, our favorite day of the week collectively. That is a Salvadoran washed process from Passenger Coffee, one of my favorite coffee companies in the US out of Pennsylvania. Excellent for espresso, should you be so inclined. The Keystone is fantastico. Okay, let's get on with business. Where's my slide? And I apologize, I am on cold number 342 of the year. My daughters report that everyone at their school is sick. And of course, they are not sick. The sneezing and coughing, nope, they are not sick. They simply are sneezing and coughing and have sore throats. So I apologize in advance. So, good morning, everyone. Ask a question. You can hop onto YouTube. There is some magical way to do a comment on this live stream on Twitter. I don't even know how to do that. I'm also streaming to Twitch. So any one of those three wonderful global platforms will do the trick. And as you can see, we have another scene from The Office. You might have noticed a theme on this slide. So anyway, el fin de semana. It was an interesting weekend. I decided to try to get one or two things done. One of which was finally dealing with the switching situation in my global data center where all of the traffic aggregates for the global operations of my multiple enterprises. And I asked some friends, I said, hey, I'm looking at some PoE switches. I need probably at least 24 ports. Do you have any recommendations? I looked at Unify and it seemed a little expensive at the time. I was like, $375 starting for 24 ports PoE. It's like, is there anything like, what do you guys use? And a friend recommended a TP-Link switch. And this is a 24 port PoE. I don't know if it's PoE plus or PoE plus plus, but 250 watt overall PoE power supply, which is a lot, I now know. I will give you a few seconds to guess what the problem is with a 250 watt PoE switch. It was not obvious to me at the time. I've had 8, I think my largest PoE switch is 8 ports, 90 watts, something like that. Well, it looked good, like not the greatest design construction, but fine. I don't really care. I'm not really building the house with it. I mounted it to my bookshelf vertically, as you can see. Can you guess what the problem is that I discovered immediately after I plugged in? Any guesses? Well, turns out that 250 watts of PoE power requires a significant amount of active cooling. Yes, not something I thought about. So as soon as I plugged this thing in, the two 40 millimeter fans went voo, and I was like, oops, I instantly knew that I made a mistake. Hadn't even considered it, I thought, 250 watts is better than 100 watts or 125 or whatever. Well, Okay, so if you're familiar with network equipment with fans, oftentimes when first booting up, they ratchet up the fans to full speed and then they drop down, which these did. Took about 10 seconds and then they calmed down, but it's still like 50% fan speed. And just if it's in my office 5 feet away from my desk here, sitting here, and even at a reasonable speed for those fans, completely unacceptable noise levels. Like, just drives you nuts. I went back, read the reviews, and sure enough, people are saying, yeah, it's great except for the fans. It's in a closet down the hall of my house, and I can hear it in my bedroom when I try to go to sleep. It's a nightmare. People did fan mods. They tried fan deletes. They tried replacing them with Noctua fans. They tried speed reducers with the resistors. And some people reported that that caused faults, that caused errors, that caused overheats and burnouts of the switch. So I read those, pulled it off my bookshelf, packed it up, returned it same day. I was like, nope, game over. And I just cry once, buy once, cry once, went with the Unify 24 port PoE 95 watt standard model switch. Fanless, silent, 100% passive cooling. Done. I learned my lesson. I'm not going to try to save $100. I am not going to try to get 250 watts on a PoE switch. Just not in my, not going to happen with me. Now, if you have a formal data center, a wiring closet with active AC, and you don't care about fan noise, sure, you could save $100, but nope, I learned my lesson. So now I do have that Unify switch mounted in my global data center. It is absolutely silent. I have checked my PoE power budget. I don't need much. It's like I'm using 14 watts on my other switches with all 8 ports loaded up. So I don't think I'm going to have a power budget issue with PoE. So that was my lesson on PoE switches. So do not try to find the switch with the highest PoE power budget unless you are prepared to deal with that consequence. Okay, so moving on from El Fin de Semana, but during the weekend on Sunday, I got this notification from Namecheap. It says, hey, you need to reissue, is the term they use, your SSL certificate. And unfortunately, I know what you're going to say, but no, Namecheap does not use Let's Encrypt. There are not many hosting providers that use Let's Encrypt, and I'm assuming it's because it is still a non-trivial revenue source for them, given that they charge, $6 to $8 a month for hosting. A SSL cert is not a bad revenue source for them, given how much they can cost. So Namecheap gives you 1 year free through their hosting plans on a new website or new domain. And after that, you need to buy their SSL certs. Now, technically, I think you could try to rig up a Let's Encrypt cert, but the effort required to renew that every 90 days, I don't know if you can script it, but I saw the manual process. Nightmare. I am not doing that every 80 to 90 days with 8-10 different websites that I host through them. So I am considering switching to Bluehost, which does apparently support Let's Encrypt. But as you can imagine, moving 8-10 hosted sites to a different platform is non-trivial. So do I care? Am I just going to pay the penalty? But I don't mind the pain, but this was a major hassle. So I'm sitting there like, why can't I reissue a cert that I paid for? When I go to try to renew through their links, it tries to put a new cert in my shopping cart. It just takes me right to the checkout page to buy a new cert. So it feels real scammy. And I'm a huge fan of Namecheap. Never had a problem with them before. I've had great service from them, no issues whatsoever. I think they have an awesome service. But this just feels like a scam, whatever they're doing here. I don't know if they're just need to clean out their act, but it sent me to a shopping cart to purchase. And I'm like, wait a minute, I purchased a 5-year cert. I just need to reissue the next year, which is one of their requirements. They claim you can't use a cert more than a year, which I understand due to the SSL requirements, but they made it unbelievably hard to try and reissue this cert. They said, oh, there's a bug in our system, blah, blah, blah. So after 40 minutes on the line with support with something where I'm manually editing URLs and putting in IDs and all this garbage to prompt their system to let me reissue a cert, it was just a nightmare. I'm like, what's going on? They're like, oh, it's due to an issue with our systems. Like, kind of sketchy, shady. I don't know what's going on. They had excuses every single second, no matter what question I asked. I said, fine. And the issue they come up with, oh, well, you have to renew or reissue this cert more than 30 days before expiration. Otherwise, our system won't let you reissue. I'm like, what? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But then if you try to reissue the cert more than 30 days in advance, guess what? Their system won't let you. So you cannot reissue more than 30 days in advance, and you cannot reissue less than 30 days in advance, and you cannot reissue exactly 30 days in advance. So I don't know what the solution is, but I'm stuck with the instructions that I documented of manually editing a URL to prompt their system to reissue. So to try to facilitate this, I was trying to be clever. I was like, well, okay. I was kind of like, I'd had enough. I'm like, fine. Their stupid system won't warn me more than 30. That's another thing. They will only send me reminders 30 days or less of expiration. They will not send me anything 31 days or more. It's like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, just train wreck. So I said, fine. I said, can Power Automate send me a reminder? Not really. There's no connector for Namecheap. Major hassle to try to call Namecheap APIs because Namecheap requires IP address whitelisting. Come on, man. Like, I get the whitelisting, but of course you can't do that in Power Automate because Namecheap only allows you to whitelist, say, 20 IP addresses, and Power Automate and Azure can't limit, they have a list of 200 IP addresses that they may be using for outbound calls. So I thought I was being clever. I pulled together this PowerShell script, and it worked great, actually. And I don't know the first thing about PowerShell scripts, but I cobbled this together in 20, 30 minutes. I was pretty impressed with myself. And I'm pretty impressed with PowerShell. I gotta say, like, I don't understand it. It's a little quirky. It does some things very differently than, say, .NET, but it is unbelievably powerful. And the way it just auto parses JSON, it's just like, okay, I got your JSON object. How do you want to navigate it? I'm like, whoa, you don't have to send it a model. You don't have to push it into a object. Like, super powerful. I'm like, every time I work with them, kind of gaining new appreciation for it. So 20 minutes, knowing nothing, I was able to cobble this together based on my limited experience doing BC Container Helper PowerShell scripts. And it worked awesome. Sent me an email. I had secure strings for my email authentication, secure strings for the API authentication for Namecheap. Like, I was pretty happy with it given my limitations. So I was like, hey, if the time span is less than 60 days, send me an email. And boom, it worked beautifully. So that is in place. And then Torben on Twitter, he's like, hello, you might want to use Uptime Kuma for that. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, you're kidding me. I use Uptime Kuma for system monitoring, and it will do connections to HTTP, it'll do a ping, it'll do various other API calls, whatever you want, to check if an internal or external system is down, up, has an issue. Well, it has this brilliant feature where it will automatically check for certificate expiration and say, oh, hey, your SSL cert is expired. Well, I knew about that. I'd kind of forgotten about it in the unhappiness with Namecheap, but I did not I knew that it did have SSL cert. I'm like, oh, that's a good idea, but that only tells me when it's expired. So I need to know 60 days in advance. Well, I go look because Torben knows what he's talking about. I'm like, wait, am I missing something? So I go and look. Sure enough, it lets you set whatever day notification you want. So I've got two Uptime Kuma nodes. I've got one on my internal network that I run, but sometimes it has connection issues for whatever reason from my ISP to, say, Azure. And it reports connection issues saying unable to connect to my Azure West, Azure East resources. So I was a little suspicious about this because my developer does not see similar connectivity issues. So I have a second Uptime Kuma hosted with DigitalOcean. And so I have my internal Uptime Kuma, my external DigitalOcean Uptime Kuma, and they're both checking uptime of all these resources. And I'm noticing inconsistencies. My internal one will say I can't connect, whereas external says it's fine, and vice versa. So I'm not sure what's going on, but Azure comes and goes, shall we say. But anyway, Uptime Kuma does have TLS certificate expiration any number of days in advance you want. I was like, facepalm. So now I've got belt and suspenders. I've got my my PowerShell script if I want, that runs every morning. I've now got Uptime Kuma, it runs whatever frequency I want. So brilliant solutions for SSL expiration notifications. If you have an annoying host like Namecheap. The only host, I looked up the hosts that support Let's Encrypt, and Bluehost was the only one I recognized. The others I had never heard of. Now, I also have a site on HostGator, and for whatever plan level that I'm paying for, it just includes SSL certs. And it used to be this annoying process where I had to go in there and manually renew, but they no longer require that. And they auto renew for me. I don't have to do anything. And they just take care of it as part of my business hosting package. Now, maybe Namecheap has a higher tier that I need to pay for. I'll look into it, but HostGator takes care of it. Apparently, Bluehost takes care of it. So Namecheap, step up your game, man. You have awesome services. Otherwise, this is a nightmare. Anyway, I'll shut up on SSL certs. Weekly projects. SIP. ERP Center of Excellence interns are rocking. They are doing great. They have only had 3 months of training from never hearing the word abbreviation ERP to now having paid implementations. And I'll get to that. But they are doing awesome. So congratulations to them. So we've worked very hard this week. AP and AR payment applications. That's kind of the continuing theme with Business Central for me over the last 3 weeks. And we are working on a new AppSource app. We need to get it published for an October 1 go live. So I need to see what type of minefield that is like, because we haven't done a new AppSource app in a while. So I'm a little concerned about that. I just don't remember the process. And we are exploring a new strategy. We had a customer who needed certain integrations to BC. And big surprise, there is no BC endpoint for BC Web API endpoint for these objects. So we were looking into creating a custom BC API. And I'm just like, why is this such a pain in the butt? It's not hard, but when you're doing a fully custom one, you're going to have to create your own custom triggers and figure out, reverse engineer how that all works. And it's kind of a hassle. And so we'd also have to have 3 endpoints. We need the header, a line, and then a child record as well. And it's like, oh, come on. So we'd have to create 3 separate custom API pages that all interrelate and deal with all these interdependencies at the web API level. But then the customer says, well, we want to be able to import a file as well. So we want to be able to export the file from the system and import it in the short term for go live, but then also be able to have an API connection moving forward. So we'd have to do double the work, file import plus custom APIs. I said, this is preposterous. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, what if for our file import, rather than doing CSV, which would have been 2 or 3 files, or Excel, which I never want to do an import with Excel. That's just trouble. What if our file import was a JSON file? We could have a single JSON file for all three of our data objects, header, record, child, the JSON structure handles all the relationships. JSON is a very standard thing. The system, the developer who maintains the system that we're getting the data from, he's cool with JSON. It's like easier than doing two CSV files. And if we're importing that, and also my developer's like, I'm cool with JSON. I've done web service integrations. Like, I know that inside and out with BC. I'd rather do that than try to figure out a CSV or Excel file import. So we're all on board with JSON. I'm like, and guess what? What if for that file import JSON format, we use that exact same file format, that exact same code unit or whatever we need in BC, and we publish a custom BC Web API that does not use the BC Web API 2.0 infrastructure at all. We abandon all of the BC Web API because honestly, it's not doing us any good. We figure out how to do a custom endpoint that will accept a generic JSON payload. Guess what? Same JSON payload, file import, Web API, same code unit to parse and process that JSON. I'm like, why didn't I think of this earlier? I don't know if it's possible, but I'm sick and tired of telling customers that, oh, the BC Web API doesn't support that object, that it doesn't have that field, and then we got to create a fully custom API. It's not an extension, at least not yet. I don't know if they're going to add that support. So I'm like, hey, we have three data objects. It's hierarchical. It's structured. Let's go for a JSON payload for both file import and a custom API endpoint, completely bypassing all of the noise and headaches of the Web API 2.0. I'm like, that's it. So we're going to try that. We're off-roading, as I say. I think it's going to work. I think it's going to be pretty cool. And yeah, so let me know if you've done this. Like maybe I'm just slow to the party, but that's where we're going with this. So Monday, lunes, I had a call with a customer. This is an ongoing saga with this customer that I support for an ISV solution. And we finally figured out who their partner was. And we had a call with me, the customer, and their partner of record, meaning they pay them thousands of dollars each year and get nothing in return. And the customer says, hey, we want to use this ISV solution. We need help with the implementation support and a few tweaks based on our specific requirements. I'm on the call like, hey, I'll help you with the ISV side of things. I just need you to help the customer with their internal stuff. Partner's like, no. We're a 13,000 employee company. We don't support any old ISV. We only support the ISVs that we support. We have 10-year relationships with our ISVs and we have contracts. He didn't really talk like that. It just sounds funny. He's like, I wouldn't accept that liability. We're a big corporation. It was the strangest call I've ever had. And I'm like, what? Is this your customer? Like, we don't just work with ISVs. Are you kidding me? And I'm just like, I was speechless. And I'm like, okay, you get thousands of dollars a year from this customer and you will not support them with an ISV solution they want to use. I asked about this on Twitter, and typical Twitter, people are like hallucinating about what I'm asking for. Well, there's a reason and blah, blah. I was like, okay, well, guess what? You don't want to support your customer? Guess what the next phone call is? I have a relationship with an ISV who's happy to work with this customer, happy to support this ISV, happy to work with me. So we had a call, customer's thrilled. They're going to start working with the new ISV. And hopefully they start paying that new ISV thousands of dollars. Good for them. And guess what? That new partner does not have 13,000 employees, and they're thrilled to get the new customer and happily support them. So I don't know what game they're playing, but good for them. I had never worked with them before. I hadn't heard of them before in their fancy schmancy 13,000 employee company, but whatever. Moving on. So that was weird. And then on Monday, I get a ping from one of our consultants, and she's like, "Help! All of these all these Power BI reports don't work for this customer." And I'm like, "I'm probably the last person you want helping you on a Power BI report." Oh, and clarification, Christopher asked, bad look for Business Central in general. This was a Dynamics GP partner, Dynamics GP ISV that I sell and support. But same concept. I got the similar feedback from BC people on Twitter saying, well, there are reasons we don't support ISV solutions. I'm like, okay. And there are reasons why I'm happy to send your customer to a new partner who will help. And like, I get it. If you don't like an ISV because you've had a bad relationship with them, that's one thing. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm the ISV, folks, Steve Endo. If you think I am so bad that you don't want to work with me, that's one thing. But I'm here on the phone with the customer trying to help them. I just want the partner involved because I don't want to go rogue without the partner's involvement. And when the partner tells me, no, Steve Endo, I don't know who you are. You're some schmuck. We're a big company. I'm not going to work with you. I'm like, okay. I'm going to find you a new partner, customer. So anyway, it was a GP partner in quotation marks, right? So they just collect the money from their customers. Apparently, they don't really provide much support. Anyway, moving on. Power BI BC connector broke. This was last week, apparently, as far as I could tell from the comments, somewhere around Wednesday of last week, which would have been September 4th-ish, somewhere around there. I don't know why. The Power BI connector, only on published reports on the Power BI portal or wherever that's called, they changed the parameter requirements for Business Central. And that broke any Power BI report using the BC connector with certain parameters. I don't know where these parameters are defaulted or set. It's not done manually. So when you connect to a data source and create a query, these parameters just get set. And this is the error message that we saw, only if you knew to dig into it. Expression error, the OData connector failed. We cannot convert the value null to type record. The exception was raised by IDB command interface, table, and then some table name. Well, I don't know Power BI from anything, so I'm helping our consultant, and she knows Power BI. She's like, I don't know where to find this. So I Googled this error, and thankfully there is a thread, a forum post about this. Someone's like, what is going on? All my reports broke. And someone like mystery person posts, oh, here's the reason for this. Here's the fix. I'm like, who are you, mystery person? And it turns out that it has to do with the 4 nulls. And if you work with Power BI connecting to BC, I'm pretty sure you don't know what the 4 nulls are. These are the 4 nulls. And they said, oh, the 4th null was changed. That is no longer a valid parameter in the connector. You have to use this other syntax. And I'm like, we're both like, what? What does that even mean? When you do a connector, you just choose a connector. You don't sit there and set null parameters. That's crazy. So we finally found that in whatever the data explorer thingy in Power BI, sorry, I don't know the words. You click on the data thingy, you look at your queries, you right click, you go into the advanced editor, and this is what you get. You get the actual script for the Power BI connector to connect to BC. And it looks like source equals Dynamics 365 Business Central .api contents with options, whatever that means. Null. Apparently that is now broken. You can no longer do that. You have to change the next null. Gosh, I didn't include a screenshot of the fix. It doesn't look like. Nope. So you go to this QR code. It's to the forum thread. It tells you what to do. As far as we figured out, because we looked at other queries and they didn't have an error, turns out those queries use the connector with 3 nulls. Those work fine. It's simply the 4th null. If that is present, appears to be optional, you need to change that with some implicit data type conversion from null to this record type, and it works. And this will not show up as a problem from the Power BI desktop app if you try to run the report. It's only once you publish the report and it's the something schema, blah, blah, blah. Sorry, I'm not a Power BI person, but go to that QR code, find the forum. You'll see one option to fix it. You replace this with a data type conversion, or as far as we could tell, you drop the null and you go down to 3 nulls. But I don't know if there are any negative consequences to going to 3 nulls. So anyway, hundreds of people have had thousands of reports break because of this unannounced, undocumented breaking change, as far as I could tell. So bonkers. What are you doing, Microsoft? Okay, so BC Learning Front, Jeremy's sparebrain.com. He is transitioning to a new role and working with another firm. So the spare-brained offerings are, I believe he said it's going to narrow down. And as part of that, the online courses, the recorded courses are being offered at 50% off or something like that. I think they're 30 euros. So if you're interested in these 2 courses, you have a limited time to take advantage of them. It's not 100 euros. I think they go into the shopping cart at 30 euros. Being efficient with VS Code and AL, and being efficient with AL, VS Code, and Copilot, head on over to sparebrain.com education and check out the past courses and grab the recording. I mean, 30 euros, I can guarantee you there are at least 2 or 3 things you're going to learn to save you time there. So check that out. And Tuesday. So this is just kind of a hobby of mine. I notice things. I notice details. And I'm just standing there waiting for my takeout lunch at the takeout sushi restaurant, right? And this is my Tuesday. And I'm looking at that and I'm like, someone spent time doing this. Someone got up on a ladder and replaced some conduit, and you see these shiny elbows and conduit fasteners on the stucco. They had to use a hammer drill, presumably. They had to put these screws in, and that is what they did. Like, imagine that. Imagine doing all that effort, and that's the end result of your work product. I'm just fascinated by this, like watching a train wreck, like, wow, that unfolded differently than I expected, right? They didn't bother to make the elbow horizontal. They didn't bother to just have the conduit go straight, because I'm assuming that would have required 60 more seconds to trim the conduit, trim the wires, and reconnect the wires, or whatever the scenario was that caused this conduit to be run. I'm assuming it wasn't run like that new, but who knows? Like, imagine caring so little about your work that that's what you do. It fascinates me. So I when I see these things, I provide these as just little lessons to the ERP Center of Excellence interns. And the word excellence is not an accident. And I point out to them that we have to do everything better. Everything, every detail, every task, we need to notice more than the partner, more than the customer. We need to do it better, cleaner, like just nail it so that there's just no question. Because I look at that and I instantly just like, I know exactly what the person did and how lazy they had to have been to do that. So, like, come on, folks, step it up. It doesn't take that much longer, and it shows. It's noticed. I notice it. Wednesday was, I'm sure, I've had several calls like this. So you have had, if you're a partner, you have had to have calls like this. We are considering using EDI. And I work a lot with small and medium-sized businesses, and they don't use EDI, but they're having to work with large companies. Walmart is a common name, Home Depot, Target, national retailers, distributors, and these small retailers or small distributors, manufacturers, whatever, they are excited to have the opportunity to work with these very large companies, but they have the looming threat of EDI. Sometimes they don't know what EDI is. Sometimes they kind of know what EDI is in concept. Sometimes they kind of understand the concept of, or the prospect of EDI and don't know how to move to the next step. So I've had several of these calls, and invariably they end up speaking with an EDI provider and being told that this will cost tens of thousands of dollars and take a couple months to implement. And then the conversation ends. And every single call I've had has been a waste of time, just because it's more about educating the customer. And as soon as they see the price tag, they realize they're just not willing to spend that money. This was another one of those, but this customer seemed to be a little more serious about it. But they said, we just want to be ready to implement EDI should Target call us to request, 27 truckloads of our product when we normally ship one at a time to customers. So I don't know how realistic this conversation was, but I'm just like, I don't know what to do about this. I don't know if there's a good solution. Now, I had a call with an EDI provider who claimed to have a turnkey implementation at low cost for a subscription, and they would not charge the tens of thousands of dollars a setup because they already had the connectors and blah, blah, blah. I don't know if that's real. I don't know how to assess it. I'm not an EDI expert. I've literally never implemented EDI because none of my customers were willing to pay tens of thousands of dollars to implement it. And also, many of these companies use a third-party intermediate platform that has other integration options, even CSV file, for instance, API calls, you name it. So I honestly don't know that EDI is truly a requirement, even though the word EDI is mentioned. Now, how do you deal with an ASN and some ANSI 1234 whatever EDI message? I don't know. But I've had numerous calls like this, and they have been very unproductive. So I don't know the answer. If someone has an answer, let me know. Every EDI partner on the planet is like, we have the answer. Of course you do, for $30,000. Yep. So that was my Wednesday. And on Wednesday, I received the shipment from Land's End. I've tried other solutions, but keep going back to Land's End. So Land's End, we have our logo for Blue Dragonfly test team. And so a couple weeks ago, I went online, changed the thread color, ordered different color shirts. So these are my polo shirts, and these are battle tested in El Salvador. So in El Salvador, I lived there for 3 or 4 weeks, and I had to hand wash my clothes because I wasn't about to walk a mile in the mud, in the rain, to go down to the laundromat to try to figure out how to use the washers and dryers there and sit there. So I just hand washed my clothes. And these synthetic, dry wicking clothes worked fantastic. They survived hand washing, wringing them out, drying them out, hanging them. They quick dried. So it was fantastic. So I was like, great. And they happen to be the cheapest shirt of this type from Land's End. So it was perfect. So yeah, got a couple of those, tried a blue, tried a gray, different colored logos. And so I am ready with my wardrobe for El Salvador next week. And in cybersecurity news, to the surprise of absolutely no one, we have another data breach. And I got another data breach in the mail here from a former customer. Apparently their ERP system was breached because I was a vendor in their ERP system and I got a data breach notification. So I don't know if they just did a blanket send to everyone regardless, but yeah, I got breached there. So 2 breaches this week. I'm not a Fortinet customer, but Fortinet apparently had gigs and gigs of data on a, on a shared drive. I don't know if it was OneDrive or Dropbox or Google Drive or whatever, but apparently that was compromised, presumably through an employee account, and they got access to a small number of customers, less than 0.3%. So who knows what other data was accessed. And so no vendor is immune, no company is immune. But on the good news front, I previously talked about quantum resistant cryptography, quantum resistant cryptography. And so this is what is called lattice-based cryptography, whatever that means, that is basically inefficient for standard computers and even quantum computers. They just don't have the algorithms to crack this type of cryptography. And so Microsoft is apparently participating in the NIST. They're, on the NIST board or whatever, and they participated in the NIST quantum resistant crypto evaluations. And so they are on board with the PQC algorithms, and they are adding them to what is called their SymCrypt library. And SymCrypt, I believe, has been around forever. I think that's just their standard .NET and .NET library that does the encryption. And they are adding the PQC algorithms to SymCrypt, and they're going through FIPS 140 validation. Folks, do not just go out there and grab some encryption algorithm like Reindahl, or some people call it Reindel or Rigendel or whatever, but it's pronounced Reindahl. Do not use Reindahl. It is not FIPS 140 certified. So if you ever have a security audit and you're using Reindahl or some other equivalent cryptographic algorithms, you will fail your FIPS audit. You need to use FIPS validated cryptographic modules. And this is a scan that'll be done of your network. Now, I happen to know this because a partner I worked with implemented encryption using Reindahl, and it's effectively equivalent to AES, but because Reindahl was used in .NET, the scan picked that up, and they failed their FIPS 140 initial scan. So we had to re-implement using the proper AES library in .NET in this FIPS 140 certified SymCrypt, and then they passed. So don't use random encryption algorithms. I strongly recommend using only FIPS 140 validated cryptographic modules. So they have this for Windows, they have this for Linux, and they're adding the PQC algorithms to that, which I don't yet remember the names because there's 3 of them. And they take the candidate names, and when the candidate is selected by NIST as a finalist to be adopted, they change the name. So it's not doesn't have a vendor association. So it's like KLMEM, FIPS 203, formerly Kyber, FIPS 204, MLDSA, and SLHDSA. Like, I need to figure out what all that means. So FIPS 203, 204, 205. So only use the FIPS certified encryption algorithms. So that's good news. Those are rolling out. Those are available in Microsoft SymCrypt if you're in the Microsoft world. If you're not in the Microsoft world, choose carefully when choosing your encryption libraries. If you're using PHP or Rust or C++ or whatever, you will need to find a library. Do not attempt to roll your own. And I'm at the 45-minute mark. Let's jam. BCAL compiler bug. This is GitHub issue 7813 of the AL language repository. I have received notification on this thread that this has been fixed. And the developer who responded said that this should be fixed in platform 25.0.23862, whatever that means. And someone else replied that they saw it was fixed in platform 23876, which is a later release that they had access to. Now, I have no idea how to check the platform version because I've done numerous tests against BC Container Helper, Get BC Artifact URL, Next Major, which is the former BC Insider builds. And we are only able to see the application version, not the platform version. So I don't know how, other than building a new container and checking the platform version, I don't know an easy way to check the platform version. So I'll have to figure that out and I don't know, check my next major container that gets created on my Docker server. But anyway, that's good news. So we will test this. We'll go through our Cosmo Alpaca pipelines, fire those off, make sure that our 2 projects that were previously failing on Next Major pass with flying colors. So that is good news. We do not have to enact our emergency release procedures. Very dramatic sounding, right? Cheers to those parents who have kids in school. Cheers. You have my empathy. Okay. And on the semi-cybersecurity related front, Black Hills Information Security had a excuse me, they had a webcast of their internal SOC analysts, I guess they call them, how logging strategies can affect cyber investigations. And these are two Black Hills employees, I believe, who talked about how they use Windows logging on their Windows machines or customer Windows machines in order to analyze malicious activity. And so if you get past the first 30 minutes of chit chat, you get into the webcast and then 20 minutes of introductions, you'll eventually get to the point where they talk about how they've configured the Windows log on the sample victim PC, and then how they use Kali Linux to trigger malicious attacks of that Windows machine, and what that looks like in the logs. Now, I haven't finished it because unfortunately, it's not the most exciting webcast, but I need to get through it and see how they did their configuration. They talk about their baseline Windows login configuration. Then they talk about the attacks they simulated from Kali. And then they talk about what they look for in the Windows log to detect that type of attack. So I need to get through this. I do have my Windows event logs configured in terms of detecting lots of stuff. I do not yet have alerts in my SIM. I don't have my Windows logs being ingested into my SIM because that on its own is a massive undertaking. So I'm kind of curious how they analyze the Windows logs. Like, how do they have alerts of this Windows logs? Is it EDM, XDR, EDR, XDR? Is it some other method? Because ingesting Windows logs in your SIM is just nightmare territory. So anyway, if you're into information security, cybersecurity, check out that webcast and see if you can make it through it. And on the Próximos Eventos list, we have Summit NA roadshows. Atlanta coming up in 12 days, Indianapolis in November, and Houston in December. So that's available from Dynamics Communities, and I believe those are free. And other Próximos Eventos, Summit North America, October 13th. See you there. As long as I survive this viral onslaught and can make it, I'll be speaking with Silvio on analysis views. We have some interesting stuff going on there, more for end user, but we do have some tidbits for more on the developer technical side. A few tips if you're bored and want to come join us and have some fun. Directions EMEA 2024, November in Vienna. I believe they are finalizing their speaker and session selections for that conference. And BC Day, Australia, New Zealand. If you are down under, head on over to Sydney, hike on top of the bridge, and November 28th, Thanksgiving Day. businesscentralday.co.nz, and some trivia. I was in Sydney, Australia at the Harbour Bay Bridge on Thanksgiving, craving American Thanksgiving dinner. And I went to the, world-class Thai restaurant at the base of the Sydney Bridge. It's actually featured in a world-famous authentic Thai cookbook. And it blew my socks off with spiciness, but it was very, very interesting Thai restaurant. So that is my Sydney, Australia Thanksgiving Day trivia. Yeah, I was there. And we have Engage 2024, December 9th in St. Petersburg, Tampa area, Florida. wwmstug.com. Check it out. And, I think this is redundant. I've already told this story. So this is a repeat. I moved it to Tuesday, I think, just to consolidate time. So blah, blah, blah. Yep. So know your Dynamics partner. And moving on to Thursday, which was yesterday, ayer in Spanish, I believe. I think that's right. We had an earthquake. So I'm brushing my teeth upstairs in my house at, I don't know, 7:30 in the morning, and the house starts shaking. And I notice the first bump. The cat freaks out, starts looking at the ceiling, then bolts. And sure enough, I'm like, here we go. So I'm just sitting down, fortunately, brushing my teeth, and the house starts really shaking. I was like, yeah, that is no joke. That's got to be at least a 4. It was originally rated a 5.1, but very common they get downgraded once they do further analysis. Turned out to be a 4.7 off the coast of Malibu, or actually in Malibu. It was a kicker. So yeah, we made it out okay, no damage, but it wakes you up. And then I had some fun reading a Banks Micker specification. And I was reading through, I was like, okay, blah, 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 super boring. And then I read this. An imaginary rectangle of fixed size and location with its long axis parallel. I'm like, imaginary rectangle? What is an imaginary rectangle? Now notice right below it in convenience amount rectangle, they call it a rectangle. They don't call it an imaginary rectangle. And the description says a rectangular area for convenience amount. So I just thought it was strange. Like, who would think to say an imaginary rectangle? Did they have a customer say, well, you said a rectangle, so I punched a hole in my checks, or I drew a rectangle? Like there's got to be a story behind that. That's a very strange word to add. So anyway, I thought that was lively. And welcome, Viernes. You have made it through the week and through 53 minutes of my rambling. We have the live stream. We have a call with Berlin in 5 minutes. And while preparing this last night, I remembered that I forgot to do a statement of work. And I was like, oh, it was a couple days ago. No, it was September 4th. Oh my gosh. So I was like, wait a minute. I'm talking about AP and AR reply. Wasn't there a customer who wanted AR reply? Yes, there was, Steve. And you had a call with them, and that was September 4th when you started that statement of work. Then you took your laptop to lunch intending to work on it. And guess what? You forgot about it. Like, that's why I hate doing statements of work, because it just takes time. It's kind of a hassle. It's tedious. No one reads it. And then I forget about it and I become the bottleneck. So I need to do that at some point today, crank that out, get it pushed out. Maybe I just need to be less thorough with my statements of work and just say, hey, we're going to do this. Here you go. Here's the estimate. Boom. Vamos. So let me know what's your tip, because I'm just getting tired of doing them. Yeah, I wish it were easier. And excellence update. As I mentioned, we have our first paid Business Central project for the ERP Center of Excellence interns in Berlin, El Salvador. Cheers. Congratulations, Steve. One of the craziest things I've done in my life. July 2023, I announced this insane project to do something in El Salvador and build the world's premier training center in Latin America and provide world-class Business Central services. And what do you know? We now have a Business Central project. We're going to be starting with data migration config packages coming from a MAS system. I've never worked with MAS, heard of it a lot, so this is the first time I've seen their data. It is unusual. Let me put it that way. Very understandable, but unusual, the CSV files we got. So we'll be doing data migration for master records initially, and we are going to be doing at least 3 report layouts, which look interesting. So, yeah. So the interns are fired up. They're ready to go. They are already digging into the configuration packages, getting those prepped. So yeah, that is awesome news. Our very first project, we're very thrilled, and they are happy to start having billable hours so that they can help my wallet reduce the burn rate, as I have been funding everything out of pocket. So it's great news all around. And we are also live with ERP support team. We are working out our procedures for receiving support tickets. So that is good. So yeah, all good on the excellence update front. And while we were working on the project, they were practicing on the check format in order to prepare for this project. And they were working on reformatting the check, stub check. And we noticed something weird. When David ran this check, we noticed that the document number field, document date field was blank. Like, that's weird. And also the discount number amount appears on the first stub. It does not appear on the second stub. So we're like, what's going on there? We didn't really know. We're like, oh, do you need to drag the field there? But no, the fields are there. So we're kind of puzzled. And it turns out that Jocelyn has run her check report format in her environments. And let me see if I can do some ninja work on PowerPoint here. And look at that. So Jocelyn's check does show the fields, but she is running hers in a different Business Central tenant. So we're just like, what is going on? And David has tried this check format in 2 different environments in the same tenant. Jocelyn uses the exact same file. She grabbed David's report layout, put it in hers, and it works. So we're kind of puzzled. We don't know if it's an environment. We don't think it's the report layout. So strangely, the same report layout will not display fields in a different tenant. We're kind of stumped, but it's fascinating. They noticed it. They picked up on it. And we're like, cool. We're going to go check it out and try to figure out what's going on here. I'm kind of puzzled. And in the future prediction market, you will recall that I talked about wireless being a fad. And this is the venerable Bob Metcalfe, inventor of Ethernet, saying wireless computing will flop permanently. It's a dead technology. Give up on it, folks. There's a reason that toilets have plumbing. That was his analogy. And I just happened to see this week. Americans used a record 100 trillion megabytes of wireless data in 2023. But it's a fad. So I thought this was a timely news article. So that was entertaining. So be prepared for the collapse of wireless computing, folks. It is a fad. It will go away and we'll go back to wired. And this was fun. Today I kind of dealt with 2 situations where I emailed people and I said, hey, I'm available Wednesday the 18th from 12:30 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, and September 19th from 12:30 to 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Then I got a meeting invite at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And I'm like, was this not clear? And then this happened a second time with a different person with different times. And I'm like, okay, I got to find a better way. I give up. So following Alyssa, who's a consultant on our team, she's implemented Microsoft Bookings. I finally set up Microsoft Bookings on my one of my 365 accounts. And very easy to set up. I didn't do it earlier because my email is a mess, but I'm finally transitioning over to a different O365 account. And I am finally able to use Microsoft Bookings. And it seems to work. So I changed this, and while setting this up, I noticed something. Do you see it? I'm not going to say what it is, but it is something that was obvious to me. And I knew it as soon as I saw it. I was like, oh, look at that. That's a mistake. And so 2 questions for you, the lovely viewers. What is the mistake? Point it out, and then explain why. Not just because here's the mistake, like explain the actual mechanics as to why it is a mistake. Now, I knew it was a mistake. I just could not tell you. I would have no idea why. And guess what? Jocelyn in El Salvador explained to me why it was a mistake. And there you go. It just goes to show that in a 10,000 person little town on the side of a volcano in El Salvador, there is someone who is an English expert who had to explain to me, a lifelong English speaker, why this was a mistake. I literally couldn't for the life of me tell you why. And she explained the exact mechanics of why it was a mistake. And hey, that is why they are part of the ERP Center of Excellence, and they're doing a kick-butt job. So Christopher says between instead of from. Okay. I don't see between, so maybe I'm just missing it, but that is not what I'm looking for. So I'll just point it out. On the personal booking page, the default values that showed up for me were 15 minutes meeting, 30 minutes meeting. That is incorrect English. You would never say 15 minutes, plural, meeting. So that's the mistake. I know it's wrong. You would say a 15-minute meeting, or we had a meeting for 15 minutes. So either one of those is fine, but in this case, a 15 minutes meeting is incorrect. And the question is why? Why is it incorrect to say 15 minutes meeting? Why do we in English say 15-minute meeting, even though it's clearly plural number of minutes? Jocelyn in Berlin, El Salvador, instantly knew why. Like mechanically, grammatically, the reason why it was incorrect. And I was in awe. So this is the standard of the ERP Center of Excellence that I am pushing for. She knew more than me about English. So I leave it to you, viewers. Tell me why that is incorrect. And with that, happy Friday. El fin de semana. Enjoy your weekend. Have a great cup of coffee. And adios.
Good morning, sun. How are you? Skies above.